Welcome to episode 6 of Decoding Devy. I am Brandon Haye with the IDP Guys. You can find me on Twitter at HayB3. And make sure if you're on the YouTube stream to subscribe to the page. There's tons of good videos coming out, not only about college, NFL, betting, who to start, in the playoffs. So go ahead and do that. And I want to thank Dylan McKeage for joining me. He can be found at Kager_57 on Twitter. Dylan, thanks for joining.
Of course, man. It's been a pleasure to get on.
So you're in the Discord for Campus at Canton. So we've talked a lot ever since that's been happening. I did know you were a USF alum, but I just recently found out last week that you are also a Michigan fan. So that's one out of two isn't bad. I'm a UCF alum, so obviously we have that rivalry kind of going. So and I believe you said you've been in C2C leagues for what, 2 or 3 years?
3 years now. First year with all the guys from Campus to Canton. I'm in the Devy Debate League there as well, known as Santa Claus in that league. So that's kind of did not do well that year. This year in that league, kind of gave away too many presents, I'd say.
Yeah. So since you've had a couple years in C2C before you get started, so what have you kind of learned, and have you been fortunate enough to win any championships in any of your leagues yet?
Yeah, I'm in one of the Fanatics leagues, which is with Brandon Lejeune from all those guys over there. I'm actually just won a college league, and I'm competing for the championship next week for the NFL side as well. You learn a lot in college, though, after your first year in C2C, that's for sure. First year is kind of just go with it, find what you can get, and just draft somebody says, and just go with it, see what you can do.
Yeah, definitely. I started C2C this year, and it's funny. In everyone I joined, my college team was good, and I think there's only one of my NFL teams that was good in the Devy Debate League. I just lost this week, but it's funny because I've been playing fantasy, for 10, 15 years, and you'd think I would be better at the NFL side because, I've done that before. But the college side, I guess, I listened to a bunch of the guys at Campus at Canton early on, in Devy Debate and the Campus Life episode. So I got a lot of, Carson Strong and Cole Turner and those guys that they kind of propped up. So that helped me do very well on the college side. But it's definitely a total different, kind of animal. We've seen, I learned that you need to get some of those MAC guys for those later games, because at matching they just blow up. And, if you don't have those, it's kind of hard to win.
Yeah, in that league, I kind of listened to Felix too much on Devy Debate. Got too many Zamir Whites and guys like that, unfortunately. So didn't end up too well.
Yeah, that will happen. Yeah, I think there's certain types of players you can listen to Felix for, and then there's certain ones you need to listen to everyone else.
Yeah, I learned that the hard way this year for that league. So that was interesting for sure.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and get into talking about the college playoff. Knock on wood, it looks like everything is going to move on as of now. I mean, we've seen the bowl games canceled. I would really hope that they would do everything in their power to not have someone forfeit a playoff game. I feel like they might be playing a little hardball with just they put out that what they're saying, there would be a champion if all the other 3 teams had to forfeit. I'm hoping that was just to make sure everyone followed as many protocols as they could. But I guess we'll see this coming week. So we'll first talk about the Alabama and Cincinnati game. First of all, do you think Cincinnati should have gotten into the playoff?
That's a yes and no for me. I mean, they beat one good team this year, and I won't even say they were good. That's the issue I have with that. I mean, they had Jake Cohn as their quarterback. Notre Dame did when they beat them. I mean, no offense to Jake Cohn, but he was terrible at Wisconsin. So
Definitely, yeah.
And that was right after they barely beat Florida State as well. So, I mean, they beat a team that wasn't close to a team as of yet. Notre Dame came on right after those games, I'd have to say, and really started gelling in that perspective. But other than that, I mean, USF stayed within 21 points of Cincinnati. USF was not good this year. I mean, we won 2
Yeah.
games and we stayed within 21 of Cincinnati. So if Alabama played USF today, it would be 100-0.
Yeah,
So I mean,
definitely.
there's a yes and no to that because they are undefeated. They did beat a top 5 team technically or top 10 team technically, but I mean, the bettors put 14.5 for a reason. I think Alabama might be able to cover that.
No, I agree. And I think what helped Cincinnati was, I mean, if you put someone else in, I mean, who else could you really put in? I think that helped. I think if, Oregon hadn't lost to Utah twice, or maybe if Oklahoma State had beaten Baylor, but I kind of feel like they threw the G5 schools a bone this year. Like there was really no one else, and it's kind of like they're most likely a sacrificial lamb to Alabama anyway, because they want Alabama in the national championship for the ratings. It was kind of like whoever's going to play them is probably going to lose. So they were like, so now we can say we put them in.
See, I thought the only team that has a chance against Alabama was Michigan. I didn't think any other team in the country really has a chance against Alabama. I was like, if Jamison Williams does what he does as a true X factor, just runs down, destroys everybody on that 9 route, I don't know anybody's going to beat Alabama. You can't cover that. Michigan has Daxton Hill, who possibly can do a too high on him, but other than that, I mean, Cincinnati's going to have to bracket him with Sauce Gardner the whole game.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting too, because earlier in the year, Alabama struggled against stopping the run. I mean, against Georgia, they were able to do it. If they're going to do that, I mean, I would think Ritter is going to have to run probably the most he's done all year. They're going to have to use ball control like Georgia tried to do, but I think it's the same type of thing. I think Cincinnati, if they can get a lead early or stay within, like a touchdown by halftime, I think that's the main thing with Bama. You just have to stay in the game, kind of like what Texas A&M did to them. You got to just keep it close because most teams can't keep it close against Alabama. So that's the big thing. So, but yeah, Jamison Williams has just been on a tear, just beating everyone, and Bryce Young is playing out of his mind right now. And with Jamison Williams' speed and how Bryce Young's throwing the ball, it's really tough. So obviously Cincinnati can't get in a track meet with Alabama, so it has to be probably in something like the 20s. Even that might be stretching it a little bit. And Ritter's probably going to have to have his best game of the season. And my only worry is Cincinnati's, against Notre Dame and even Indiana, they kind of got off to a slow start. So if they get off a slow start against Alabama, I think it could be over pretty quickly.
I agree. I think Ritter's got the most to gain out of this, though. I mean, I currently have a 2nd-round grade on Ritter, but I don't really have that many top high grades on quarterbacks this year. But I mean, if Ritter goes out and beats Alabama, you think he's a 1st-round pick, high 1st-round pick?
I think he's a 1st-round pick. I don't know how high. Even if they lose and he plays really well, I think that's going to upgrade him. Currently, right now, just like before I really get into like the tape and everything, he's the 6th quarterback, I think. Behind the main 5 with Howell and Corral, and then Pickett and Malik Willis, and then Carson Strong. But he does have some ability. I don't think he's overly accurate, but I mean, if he can show it against Alabama's defense, I mean, some teams might overlook, some of that and just, say that, he's that type of player, kind of like, the gamer, the intangible type guy.
Yep.
Which some teams seem to love to go after. So yeah, he definitely has a lot to gain from this game.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Going to the other game here for Georgia and Michigan, what's your take on that one? Did you think Michigan had a chance at all?
Yeah, I've pretty much been going back and forth like every other day, like thinking that Michigan's will, because I'm a Michigan fan and I'm going to the game. So I think a lot of America will be surprised when they watch Michigan, because I'm going to guess a lot of people don't, like, they just hear that Michigan runs the ball, so they think it's just like, just straight up the middle. But there's so much variety in what they do with those reverses and Corum getting outside. I've heard Corum's 100% healthy now, and I think they can pass the ball. I mean, there's times when McNamara scares me when he throws the ball, but I think he's a better down the field passer than Stetson Bennett. So I don't think either team will just be able to run the ball and win the game. So it's going to be whoever makes the most plays down the field, I think, passing the ball.
I agree. The only word I have is George Pickens. if George Pickens gets back to what he was last year, I think George Pickens could be the X factor in the game. I mean, I got money on Michigan winning the national championship, to be honest with you, as a diehard Michigan fan. So those odds were like plus 1,300. So, I mean, it's hard to pass up. I mean, Michigan matches up so well with Georgia. Defensive wise, they got Hutchinson and I think it's Ajaro against those two tackles. Stetson Bennett's going to have to stay in the pocket against them. He's not a pocket passer. So forcing him to stay in that pocket and you collapse that pocket on him, that offense is going to struggle. Zamir White's average at best. I mean, the only guy that could really affect us is Cook. I think Cook can catch a lot of balls out of the backfield against us. The thing is with that is Cook's he's nothing like his brother, I'd say. He's not as elite. He's not going to break 10 tackles and get to the end zone on a little out route, something that matter. I think we match up so well with them. And I think we'll be able to run the ball with them. Haskins and Corum, that 1-2 punch with the trap game that we do, it's going to be hard to beat.
Yeah, I agree. My main worries you kind of mentioned are with Pickens, because I think our corners are good, or our secondary is good. But as you saw, I mean, even in that win against Ohio State, they were able to pass the ball quite a bit. Those good receivers, and I think if they can protect Stetson Bennett, and I think Bowers might be a big X factor too. I would imagine Dotson Hill might be on him. And I think another big thing for Michigan is the same thing with Ohio State. Is if I was Michigan, I would try to take the ball and score first, because you saw with Georgia against Alabama, once Alabama got ahead of them, they kind of like tried to speed up and kind of went away from their game plan. And same sense, if Michigan gets down 2 touchdowns to Georgia, I don't like that scenario. Kind of same for both teams. Whoever gets the lead first, I think, can control the game. And then, because neither team wants to be forced to pass, because you saw some of that with Michigan against Michigan State at the end of that game, when McNamara turned the ball over. That's not really where they feel comfortable. I know some media people have been saying, who has some more pressure. I think Georgia totally has some more pressure. I personally think Michigan's playing with house money now, because, I'll bring this up because it was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about is, did you have any, what was the percentage thought before the season that Michigan would be here?
Let's say this. I thought Harbaugh was going to be fired by week 8. So I had zero thought that this was happening. I was anti-Harbaugh, to be honest, full tilt. He can't do it. He can't. I got to admit, he went into the well, got some of the coaches from his brother to help him out. And it truly changed. Really getting rid of Don Brown was really the big factor on it, not playing man coverage every single play. But, I mean, Harbaugh kind of changed my tune this year. I thought they were going to be maybe a 10-win team. Thought they were going to do what they always do, win 10 games, just sneak through teams and lose to Penn State, lose to Ohio State bad, and then just come back next year because Michigan's going to do what they always do and say, "Oh, Harbaugh, we love you." But I mean, I was shocked with them doing what they did this year, but you got to thank the seniors for that. Really, with Haskins, Hutchinson, Daxton Hill being the 5-star that he truly is. I mean, that defense really took a hold of the team. And then that offensive line was massive this year. I didn't think they'd be good after losing Runyon and all the guys last year on the offensive line. So for them to get where they were, I mean, that was shocking. That Ohio State game, I was jaw dropped the whole game.
No, I agree. And my stance has always been I didn't think Harbaugh was going to be able to do it either. But mine was too. If Harbaugh couldn't come into Michigan, with the whole Michigan man thing, then who's coming in next? Like, who are they? I mean, if he wasn't going to do it, then you're probably going back to the well for someone like Rich Rod to change everything. We saw how that went. So I was kind of like, I guess, but he changed things. There's still more I need to see to think that Michigan's going to stay on this path, year after year. I still think they have to throw the ball better and not be as, doing the same thing with runs up the middle, because they're not always going to have that offensive line that's going to be able to do that. And one thing, going back to Georgia, I don't think Georgia's going to make the same mistakes that Ohio State did. I know Ohio State's defense is not very good, but if I was Ohio State, I would have just loaded up the box, just make them throw the ball. I don't care if you win. I don't care if we leave people open. Just make them throw the ball in the snow. And I know there's not going to be snow in Miami, but I've got to imagine Georgia's going to, put everyone in the box and pretty much, dare them to throw, kind of the same way Michigan's going to do to Georgia. And I think whichever team is able to throw the ball more consistently down the field, I think will probably win the game.
Do you think Georgia's going to have to load the box with Jordan Davis and Anthony and Kobe Dean?
Yeah, well, they probably don't have to load the box as much. Probably not. They could probably do it. I mean, I would imagine Georgia probably thinks that they can play man as much as they want, and then keep as many people in the box. So I think that's why it's important to get maybe Andrew Anthony or Roman Wilson deep, one of those early plays just to back them off. And I think that'll be huge. So I do like how the Michigan offense is more aggressive this year. They take those shots earlier in games, and they've worked in some nice trick plays. So I'm sure that'll be coming. But I mean, they definitely seem like a different team this year than years past. They seem mentally tougher. When bad things happen, they fight back. Whereas if that Ohio State game was, a couple years ago, when Ohio State brings it within 7, they probably crumble, fall apart, and end up losing that game. But they came down and scored again. So, that definitely was a good sign.
Yeah, the thing is that everyone forgets too. Did you know who was committed to Michigan before the year that would have made this team even better? Xavier Worthy.
Yeah. For him, I just don't know if we would have ever used him as much as Texas does. But yes, he would have been amazing to be on this team and everything. So so we'll move on to that. I'll allow you to talk a little USF Bulls football. So Jeff Scott came from Clemson a couple years ago. 1-8 and 2-10 this last year. So how do you feel about the program, and what do you think he has length of stay there in terms of winning?
I mean, last year, his first year, you can't really blame him. He kind of got handed the worst team I've ever seen on paper. So that 1-8 team back in 2020, I mean, the AD basically came in and said, "Hey, this is going to be yours as long as you want it, because we're handed nothing." Like Charlie Strong and Willie Taggart. You've seen what Willie Taggart's done to every school he's been at. he destroys them. I mean, Charlie Strong is the same way. Texas hasn't been the same. Florida hasn't been the same. So, I mean, USF's kind of been the retread school for coaches, just hiring coaches that destroy their schools, get terrible recruits. And by terrible recruits, I mean people that just aren't good at they're not good. They're just basically athletes that don't know how to play football. So, I mean, for me personally, I like Jeff Scott. I think he's going to have 4 or 5 years here till he finally gets it completely turned around. I mean, he's been hitting that transfer portal really hard these last 2 years. So he's been getting the guys. They're actually they just built a indoor practice facility for USF. So they are building it, and they are actually going to have a on campus. They're making a stadium for them. I think it's supposed to be done by 2025, 2026, something in that they're stating. So, I mean, they are truly building that program up. It's just it's gonna take a little bit to get there. UCF, you will have your days for the next few years on that case.
Yeah, I truly do think, because when I went to UCF, they weren't good. And they my senior year, they built the stadium, and it really changed everything, building the stadium on campus. And I think USF really missed an opportunity, because they were the team that was, winning 10, 11 games. They were close to that. And if they could have really put UCF more in their place at that time, especially if they could have gotten their facilities upgraded and done all of that. And I think once UCF kind of flipped the script, it's been hard for USF to kind of come back from that, because, it kind of switched over with that. So I think that's a big thing. But I think, they're smart by getting all these players, these transfer players, that go to, that some are from Florida, some are not, that go to these other schools, and it just doesn't work out. Since then this season, they've gotten 10 players from Power 5 schools on offense and defense. I have on the screen, they got Coffrey Brown, who was a 4-star, a wide receiver that went to North Carolina. He was a top, 225, player. And then they got Aju from Clemson. He was a 3-star, but still, that talent at USF. So I think they're trying to maybe speed up that process, because obviously it doesn't matter how great a recruiter you are. If you come in and say, we've only won 3 games in 2 years, I mean, not a lot. It's going to be hard to kind of build that program quick. So I think getting those transfers in to maybe manufacture some more wins will be huge for them. So who are some players that people should look out for at USF for 2022 for C2C formats?
Yeah, the guy that's getting all those players there that people are kind of, I mean, the C2C guys are on him, but Timmy Mclean, the quarterback, the lefty, he's a true freshman this year, but man, when he came in, he went off. I think he runs like a 4.5 40. He truly is a true dual threat. He will make it a lot of fun to watch USF football. There's no defense in USF, so it's just throw the ball, throw it deep, and QB runs. The key thing with him is he actually went to high school, won state championship with the USF's number 1 wide receiver at Timmy Horn, both out from Orlando. They both won multiple state championships together, so they have a true connection there. That's something for C2C. They do put up the numbers for you if you need a spot start or something in that case. McLean might be a C2C starter in probably a year or 2 for us. Truly depends on how he develops. The thing is with Jeff Scott, he is known as a wide receiver recruiter. I mean, he was the one that got D-Hop back at Clemson. He got all the big names at Clemson for wide receivers. He is the wide receiver guru from Clemson. You notice once he left, the wide receivers sucked at Clemson. I mean, you can pull it up. They suck since then. You look at the wide receivers at USF since he's been here. Xavier Weaver, no one's even heard of the guy. He put up starting C2C numbers last year. He was putting up like 15, 16 points a game as a wide receiver from USF. I think he was a 2-star. So, I mean, you add in a Coffee Brown, you add in a Jew, and then you keep Timmy Brown. The guy, Caffrey Brown, I'm not sure what role he's going to play with for USF because he kind of plays that same role as Timmy Horn. So, I mean, he's going to have to carve out his own role. But I think a Jew is going to get on the field and he's going to get hit. He's going to get running because what he does is he's a vertical threat that's physical. He's going to run the 9 routes. Timmy's just going to throw it up to him, or McLean's going to throw it up to him and get that done. So maybe we have a chance against UCF if we have a miracle on defense. We did just get a new DC.
Oh yeah, they actually stuck with UCF this year pretty well, but I think part of that was you guys played well, and just watching it, it looked like we did not play overly well. I wanted to ask you because I did have Xavier Weaver on a couple of my C2C teams. Do you think with these new receivers coming in that his role is going to be diminished?
I do think it's going to be a little bit diminished. The only thing is that with USF not really having a good offensive line or good tight ends, they might run 4 wide a lot. And truly, Weaver is a true slot by nature, by the way his routes, everything in that route and that method. He might actually do well because USF runs a lot of crosses, a lot of crossing routes, easy on quarterback, stuff like that matter to make it easy. So he still might get fantasy production, but I doubt he's going to be what he was the last 2 years when we really had anybody on the outside.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask you for running backs. Is Jaron Mangum going to be the lead guy next year, you think still?
So that's interesting because they have 2 running backs. They have him and Brian Batty. Brian Batty was an All-American as a kick returner this year. Brian Batty, I mean, he's small. Trust me, he's never going to make it to the pros. He's 165 pounds soaking wet. He's from local Sarasota boy, so he's a true Florida boy, but he's very agile. I think I can't remember his name. You just said it, Mangum, or he's going to get the bulk of the goal line carries, everything like that. So he's going to be more C2C relative for that matter. But Batty could truly take over a game if they really wanted to. He's kind of got that Darren Sproles type body and everything in that matter.
Well, that would be interesting, and like how you said that Timmy Mclean, do a lot of running around, and throwing, so that could be some different opportunities, running backs leaking out, big plays like that. So, and like you said, I think because I believe I wrote up the American Conference last year, the previews before, and McLean was one of the ones that I talked about that he probably wouldn't play because he had some exciting plays in the spring game. And so this year is probably another year of, kind of development, and maybe next year will be even better because, I'm guessing at USF, most of those guys are going to be there 3 or 4 years, the full 4 years, because they probably aren't going to have those numbers to, leave early. So he could be a fully developed 4-year player. And even if he doesn't make it to the NFL, you get those years of production, which, you always need in those C2C leagues.
The thing is, too, is he doesn't have Cade Norton blocking him off anymore. So he's actually getting first-team reps all summer, all spring, everything in that method. So, I mean, he's a big quarterback. I think he's 6'5", like 215. So, I mean, he's a good-sized quarterback. So, I mean, if he does develop, we'll see what Jeff Scott can do as a developer. Only his second year, so we'll see if he can actually develop talent.
Definitely, and just, kind of comparison, at Georgia Tech with Jeff Sims hasn't been a good passer, but I mean, he's a, athletic, quarterback that can run. So we've seen, there's definitely fantasy value in those athletic quarterbacks that can run, even if they're still trying to, figure out the passing aspect.
I would actually take Timmy Mclean over Jeff Sims in C2C as well as in like Devy. I mean, if you look at the two teams, I think USF actually has more talent on the outside after Georgia Tech lost Gibbs. So USF, I think, actually has more talent and could actually do more in that perspective.
Man, that is a huge indictment on Georgia Tech, but I can't really say that that's wrong. I know, losing Gibbs, and I think they're losing a couple other receivers, and they just haven't seemed to been able to pull in that talent. So we'll kind of switch gears and go a little more on the Devy side. Obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs went to Alabama. Georgia Tech really, it's amazing that he did anything at Georgia Tech. When I pulled up the numbers, they were actually rushing yards was actually more than I thought he had because they were always down and they couldn't really throw the ball. And then he still had some good games, but I'm excited to see what he does in a real offense. Especially Alabama. So what are your thoughts on Gibbs to Alabama?
So it's funny, if you actually asked me 2 years ago, when I first started, I was the biggest Jahmyr Gibbs fan. So that was when I first dove into C2C. I found him at like the bottom of all the things before Rivals jumped and everything. I was like, Gibbs is the RB1 for me. I love Gibbs. His whole high school tape, he was a dude every time. He was just like at Georgia Tech. He got hit in the backfield every single play, and he just broke off and made something out of nothing. So I was like, all right, Gibbs is going to be the guy. Georgia Tech just needs to get somebody around him. Now he's transferring to Bama. The only concern I have with Gibbs is he's only 200 pounds. So you look at the NFL threshold, there's no running backs under 210. Alabama should add 10 pounds to him. And then you also got to add in, there's 4 or 5-star running backs on Alabama as well. So that's the issue I have with that. I think Gibbs is going to blossom with Bryce Young. I mean, Bryce Young doesn't look to run the ball. He looks for a drop. He looks for the dump off. He looks for everything that Gibbs might get 40, 50 receptions next year, being a third down back. The only issue I have is Jace McKellen going to stay and steal some of that work? Or is Kamar Wheaton, or I think they have Henderson coming in this year too, but Henderson's a little small, needs to get some weight on him. I mean, Gibbs is going to have to I'm hoping he's not another Eric Gray. That's all I'm hoping.
Yeah, I hope not either. I think Gibbs is way better than Eric Gray, but I agree with that, and I do wonder too. I gotta imagine, Gibbs going to Alabama. I'm sure they told him, what their plan is for him, and I think, they're losing Jamison Williams, and the offense is going to be a little remade, I would guess. I do wonder if maybe they will run the ball a little bit more, with him, in the backfield. I would love to see how he'll do at Bama with a, better line, a better quarterback, so people don't stack the box. So, he could be a guy that he might get only 8 to 10 carries a game, but that might be for 80 or 100 yards, and then throw in the receptions. I agree. I think he's going to have a ton of receptions. I think they're going to use him well. And I love Jahmyr Gibbs too. Once, I started getting into this, he was a running back that I loved. Obviously not as good as Bijan, but I would take, Gibbs after Bijan. He's on the top of my list just because he does what the NFL is kind of going towards, those guys that can, the slashing runners, the guys that catch out of the backfield. I think if the correct team gets him, he could be, an Alvin Kamara type player. Kind of they do similar things. You'd obviously need that other running back that would, have more carries probably. So that in that case, Bama, has those guys where they could split up the carries, and it's probably good for Gibbs into the NFL, so he doesn't have to take the beating that he probably would have gotten at Georgia Tech.
The only thing for me is which not many people are thinking of with Alabama. Every year, Alabama's had a deep threat. They've had a guy that runs a 4-2 down the field where they can't load the box. I mean, you look at Alabama, you look at Saban's teams. He always has a slot wide receiver that can run a 4-2 that can makes you stay deep. You can't load the box on him. Who are they going to put in? Who are they going to put in that slot? JoJo Earl? Is it going to be Troy Brooks? I don't think either of them are close to Jamison Williams or what Henry Ruggs was. But when he was there as 4-2 guys that are you can't load the box on. You got to play deep. That's my only issue with them, is that they need somebody that's going to spread that defense out and spread that field to get that running game going.
No, I agree with that. I do wonder if they kind of change it a little bit with Bryce Young being so good at decision making and getting the ball out, where they, some of those freshmen this year, develop next year, and then I think has John Mechie said if he's coming back or not?
He hasn't. He hasn't decided. I mean, if I was Mechie, I would. He might have that Devontae Smith tore ACL come back with the Heisman type season if he does.
Yeah, so regardless, but I do wonder maybe they put Gibbs out wide more and just go like 4 or 5 wide and just do like a quick, more a quick passing game than some of the things that they do, longer down the field. But who knows? They might get another transfer like they got with Jamison Williams, because when Jamison Williams went there, I thought it was a bad idea because they had all those freshman receivers. They had Mechie, and I was like, he never made it to Ohio State. What's he doing? I mean, apparently he knew what he was doing, because look at him. He's jumping up draft boards. Some people have him very high. I think he's going to be a first-round pick. And in the right situation, I think he could be really good. So it's definitely interesting. And, it's just crazy with Alabama. Not only do they get all the freshman recruits, they're getting all these like transfer, these really good transfers, because you would think they wouldn't go there because they're depth charts. But, I guess when you can win a ring there, and like I say, for Jamison Williams, they get in the NFL, they get that Bama bump, just being at Bama, especially wide receiver wise, they're going to bump him up. I would say running back wise now, with how good Najee Harris has been this year, it just gets bumped up. Now, this next player is not as big of a name, but I actually really do like him. Tinsley from Western Kentucky decided to go to Penn State. I know in the Discord a lot of people were surprised because I believe it was rumored maybe to Texas Tech. So how do you feel about him going to Penn State? And do you think, he made a good choice there? I mean, it is a big-time program.
Do you know what year he is by chance? Is he a sophomore or junior?
I think he's a sophomore. I think he's played 2 years.
So it really depends on his status for me. So I saw that Clifford's coming back for another year. So he's going back for like his 6th year. Feels like his 10th based off all I've seen. I think Clifford's terrible in his own right. I mean, he's a true Big Ten quarterback. He's just like Cade McNamara in that case, where they're decent, but the wide receivers are going to have to support him, not the other way around. If Drew Aller comes in, their freshman 5-star, I think Mitchell Tinsley will dominate. Tinsley actually reminds me a little bit of Allen Robinson in that regard, so it's kind of funny when he went to Penn State. The thing is, though, I want to see Tinsley outside of that Western Kentucky system to see what he can do. If he had a great bowl game, it was funny. I was watching in the bowl game. I didn't think he was going to be playing because he entered the transfer portal. But Bailey Zappi just he targeted him. He targeted him often. He targeted him a lot. I think it was like 10 or 15 targets in that game, and he was just catching everything. I think Tinsley has the potential to go pro. I think he has that ability. He's going to have to prove it, though, at that Big Ten level. I mean, Big Ten wide receivers, they make it in the pros, but you got to dominate. That's the issue.
Yeah, and I think he could have put up big numbers like at Texas Tech, but maybe, like you're saying, system-wise, I mean, Texas Tech's probably going to spread it out. So maybe he thought, Penn State's going to be more, higher profile. And maybe he took into account, Clifford's there, but, Aller's coming, and they have some good running backs and they can throw the ball. And I actually looked at Sean Clifford's numbers. I mean, they're obviously not great, but they're way better than I anticipated. And I think if he stays healthy, I think he can run a functional Big Ten offense, like one that can score points, and put up yards. So it'll be interesting with Jahan Dotson leaving. I'm guessing Parker Washington will be like the lead guy, and then everyone else coming in. But it's definitely interesting, especially if Tinsley stays maybe 2 years. Then he could have 2 years in the Big Ten and good production. And to be honest, there's not really a ton of great defenses in the Big Ten. So he, but it still gets that claim, of being in a Power 5 conference. And if you put up those numbers, you see, you're going to get looks, because even look, Michigan never used Nico Collins all the best ways, and he still got drafted, and he's still doing, he caught his first touchdown. So I think you just have to show flashes, and get enough production, and you can make your way into the NFL.
He is a similar size and routes and everything as the Dotson did as well. So that's something that you can also look into and be like, hey, I mean, you put him in that Dotson role. I mean, that's probably what Penn State sold him on. They said, hey, you're going to be our next Dotson, and we're just going to go that way. I mean, Parker Washington's more of a 50-50 guy. He's going to go run his 9 routes and catch the balls. He's not going to be your slasher, your guy that's going to get separation. And that's why I'm not high on Parker Washington, is because he can't separate that well. I'll take a guy like Tinsley all day because he can separate, get open air, get some room. I mean, that's what the NFL is going towards. So, I mean, I think that's what Penn State saw in him as well.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. The NFL is definitely going away from those guys that are just big guys that can outmuscle, the players, and they're going for the ones that get separation, good route runners, quick speed. So that's definitely something. That's something to think about. And we've seen that last year, and it'll be interesting with some of the receivers coming out this year. What receivers, where they go, kind of like, a Drake London, where he goes, because he's in the role of more, the bigger type receiver. So, and now I wanted to talk about just like Devy leagues and tight ends. I know a lot of leagues have tight end premium, so they're looking for those, Nets tight ends, because after you get past the top like 5 or 6 tight ends in the NFL, it's all just a bunch of guys that you're hoping they catch a touchdown each week, and if not, you're not getting very much potential. But my thoughts kind of been, obviously, if there's a Kyle Pitts, you want to get him in Devy because he's a special talent, and whatever. But then other tight ends that are just okay, kind of like this year, Jalen Weidemeyer, he's an athletic player, but at Texas A&M, then he never really got that far over 500 yards. So in Devy, you're obviously wanting to pick players before they come to the NFL. I just think I would rather look for the potential in the other skill positions than for the tight end, because you're kind of wasting that pick unless you get an elite type guy. What's your kind of opinion on that for Devy leagues and tight ends?
So for tight ends, I'm actually trying to pull up one of the guys right now who I consider is like one of those tight ends that you're bringing up. He actually just committed to Miami, if it rings a bell for you. Let me see here if I can find Shaquille Skinner.
Okay, yeah.
He's kind of like that Pitts type esque of tight end coming in as a freshman. I mean, I'm a big tight end guy. I love tight ends. Pat Freiermuth, I was a huge Pat Freiermuth guy. I took him in almost every Devy league I had because I knew he was going to be good. I was like, Pat Freiermuth's got it. I mean, you got Meyer. I'm not a big Watermeyer guy or like that type of tight end. They don't work in the pros typically. I mean, Pitts just right now just broke or is like 50 yards from 1,000 yards. But I mean, they haven't really used him as a tight end in Atlanta. I see a lot of the games being a Bucs fan, so it's like, wait, he's not actually playing tight end. So I wonder how long he'll be actually listed as a tight end in that perspective. But I mean, as tight ends, you really got to like. I take one every single year in fantasy, like in the rookie supplemental drafts in C2C, just because you have no clue what you're going to hit. The thing is, the systems in college don't really use them. Like you can look at Ohio State this year, Ruckert. Ruckert's got all the potential in the world. Ohio State doesn't throw the ball to him at all. I mean, they don't throw to tight ends. Tight ends just aren't used really in college unless they're big physical blockers and they can catch a 9 route basically down the center of the field, kind of like what Gronk does now for the Bucs. So that's really, tight ends are hit or miss. You have a better chance of finding a tight end in free agency in C2C than you do drafting one now.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the biggest thing with C2C, I learned this year. You could think that they're going to be very involved. Like I got a ton of Theo Johnson this year, and there's one league where I was getting 0 from tight end every week because the tight ends I picked, they just didn't play or they didn't catch passes. So I think on the C2C side, you're kind of getting players. I guess there's two sides. You get a player kind of like a Cole Turner that is going to get a lot of college production, or get a player that might not have a lot of college production but has kind of like NFL like ability and talent. I think one for me is at Michigan, Eric All. He's never going to get a ton of stats, but I think he has good speed and he's a hell of a blocker. And he could be in that kind of mold of like a Pat Freiermuth, going to a team like the Steelers that likes to run the ball, but like red zone, threat. So I think C2C, that's it. But for Devy, I just see too many times people, like if you have a 3 or 4 round Devy draft each year, just kind of reaching on like the Charlie Kohlers and those type of tight ends. And I would much rather go for a running back or wide receiver because I just feel like they have a bigger hit rate where those tight ends, unless they're the elite ones, like probably Bowers whenever he comes out, Mayer. But some of these guys just, I don't think they're that good. Ruckert's a good one. I actually picked him late in a pretty deep Devy draft last year, and I knew he wasn't going to do much at Ohio State, but he does check a lot of the boxes, like you said. So that's kind of one of the positions where you're not going to be able to go by stats in college usually, with the exception of players like Pitts. But yeah, it's if they can, kind of have that body size and they're a good blocker. And, a lot of times it's just what situation, what team they go to.
The thing is also, and there's a difference between C2C and Devy basically for tight ends. A lot of people get that if they're new to C2C, they're going to just see the big names and they're going to be like, oh, we got to get these guys early for tight end. They think that. I mean, this year I picked up Jason Myers in like half my leagues. He had a tight end designation on Fantrax. So the dude played running back most of the year. So, I mean, C2C is totally different. It's a totally different game in that perspective. When it's Devy, you can let him develop. You can get a John Beck. You can get a Bowers. You can get one of those guys late that nobody's going to know about really, because they're going to take 2-3 years to develop in that case. I mean, how many people do you know drafted Eric Gilbert in Devy in like the first 3 rounds because he had 100 rating?
I fell for the trap because when I think it was when he went to Florida, like we did the Devy draft when he had committed to Florida. I was like, sign me up, it's going to be the Nets, Pitts and everything. And then he went to Georgia. I was like, okay, still fine. And then everything happened. And now it's kind of like, you hold on to him. But I mean, I have no idea what's going on with him, if he's ever going to play again. And, I know some people hate Devy because of that fact. But I think I like that part. It's like, it takes it a step further. And, I want to do some videos kind of on intro to Devy and then intro to C2C, just because I think once you do Dynasty, the next step is Devy. And then obviously from Devy to C2C, it just takes you a step further and it like makes you feel even more like a general manager of a team because, you get to do that picking and everything. And, it's kind of like anyone that ever does, those Madden franchises. You want to be able to play that role and everything.
So I got a question for you based off that. How long were you in Devy before you went to C2C?
2 years. 2 years of Devy.
I was the same way.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, my first Devy draft, it had it was a 3-round Devy draft, and I got Kyle Pitts, Rondale Moore, and Sam Howell. And then the following year, this year, it was only like 1 extra round. And I don't know how, but I got Jahmyr Gibbs too. So the thing that's crazy though is I'm still like losing all the time because I've had Julio Jones, which has done very little quarterback wise. I had Dak this year and Baker, and obviously Dak until this last week hadn't been doing it. It's just the crazy game of fantasy football. So
yeah, totally get it, especially for that last perspective there for you. I actually created a 15 man Devy league this year. So it's 15 rounds. The interesting thing about it, though, in the draft, you could draft Devy or NFL players all at the same time. So people were taking Devy guys super early. I think Travion went in the 3rd round, and he went he went before Bijan, and I was like, "What are you
Oh,
smoking?" And I love Travion, but like before Bijan, before the season, I'm like, that's a hard pass for me.
yeah, yeah, definitely. That's crazy, but it's like people see these big name, the freshmen and everything, and they jump on it. Sometimes it hits like Travion, but sometimes it it doesn't. So that's interesting. And I just want to close. Do you have any sleepers for next year? C2C kind of like guys that maybe had a role this year, but you think that they'll just get more production next year.
I can give you one for each position. Tight end John
Okay.
Beck. Tight end John Beck, LSU. I picked him up in a few leagues off free agency. Not many people know about John Beck. He's a good tight end. I think he's around 6'4", 215. He's kind of got that Brock Bowers size. But the only issue is he had Max Johnson throwing him the ball. So you put him on LSU, you get Butte on the outside. He's going to be somebody that's going to blossom with more reps and everything in that case at tight end. At running back, you can't go wrong with Donovan Edwards. You give him more reps. He's that 5-star from Michigan. He's going to go off. It's another sleeper there at running back. I know Donovan Edwards isn't really a sleeper. He's kind of a big name based off this year. Another guy I'd really like to see go off. You can get him cheap now is EJ Smith, the running back for Stanford. He hasn't done anything for 2 years, really. He got hurt last year, but he does everything the NFL wants at running back. He catches the ball. They had him playing slot. They had him doing everything in that matter. He might blow up this year with Austin Jones kind of out of the picture. You put Stanford with an actual that in that matter, he will be good. Wide receiver, you stated him earlier, Anthony from Michigan. That guy, he is a burner. You give him some reps, you actually get like JJ McCarthy throwing the ball instead of Noah McNamara. He might actually catch some balls and get some reps in that case. So those are the guys I look forward to and everything in that matter. The transfer portal is going to be interesting with every guy transferring in that matter, seeing where they go. There's going to be, you're going to see some positions blow up. Worthy's going to be huge. He's going, top 3 in C2C leagues because he's with yours now. But the guys you got to look out for is the scheming campus Canton. So with the guys going to Texas Tech, the coaches there from that Western Kentucky and stuff in that matter, you got to look at the schemes and see who's going to be good in that case. Who's going to replace the running backs and stuff at Fresno State this year? You got Hayner coming back. Who's going to replace Ronnie Rivers? Things in that matter. So those are the guys, the positions you got to look for and stuff in case like that.
Yeah, you stole my thunder a little bit again with the Andrew Anthony. I personally think JJ McCarthy's going to win the job. I know it'd be crazy because I think that could still happen if Cade leads them to the national championship, because I think it was closer than people really thought between them this year. I think JJ will just be better, and he just gives so much more on the offense, So I think he'll win. And I've been saying, Andrew Anthony should be getting the ball more. I think it's going to help that Ronnie Bell comes back because he, the top corner will be on Ronnie Bell, and he'll get production, and that'll leave Anthony open more. I think Roman Wilson is more of the guy they use on trick plays, the flea flickers, the reverse passes and everything. So I love Andrew Anthony, and even though he hasn't had production, there's usually one catch a game where it's not just him running down the field. He catches it one-handed or over someone. So I agree with that. Another one is Chase Brown at Illinois. He had over 1,000 yards this season, and I think he could be even more under that Beelan system. I think the running back room might be a little more clear. And he only got over 15 carries 4 times this year. So he was getting all those yards on limited amount of carries. Another player, haven't seen him play in college because he's been injured, but Thomas Fedone in Nebraska, tight end. He was, highly recruited, and I think they'll probably try to use the tight end quite a bit more. And I think the other day we were talking about him, Donovan McCulley from Indiana. He had to start some games this year, and definitely going through growing pains. But you saw how athletic he is. He's just so much more like physically gifted than Michael Penix. So I think you saw what Michael Penix did at Indiana. So I think if he can develop, maybe not next year, but the year after that, I think he could be really big, and you could get him very late in drafts, or probably even just a throw in on certain trades, if you're already in a C2C league.
Yeah, the fun thing with McCulley is, it seems like he was just a throw-in at Indiana to get his brother, because his brother's the 5-star guy coming in this year.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So the thing is with him is like he's a lot better than what you thought, because I think he was a 3-star guy coming in last year, and for him to truly blossom in that role, I mean, Indiana had nothing. I mean, that team is like gutted. I mean, I think Cincinnati put him as one of their best wins, and I was like, I think every team that played Indiana put their backups in the second half.
No, I definitely agree. So yeah, those are some good names, and obviously we're still in season, and I think even after the playoff, you're going to see some players on those playoff teams probably transfer out. Stay for the playoff, maybe hopefully get a national title, and then see the writing on the wall with freshmen coming in that they might be further down on the depth chart. I'm sure that's going to happen with all those schools that already happened. So, there's still some players that haven't decided. Zach Evans is still out there, and I'm really interested where he's going to go. And I'm sure there's some others, because there seems like there's a new 20 players every day in the transfer portal. So Dylan, thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed talking some Michigan football, and even some South Florida football. Gave me some good names to watch out for, and taught some Devy. And so that'll do it for this episode, and we'll catch you guys next week.
Thanks.